Hey everyone, welcome back to the Book Vandal Shop. This is part 2 of our file folder journal project. In this video, we are going to be making just the bare bones, the flips and flaps and the cover for our project. If you didn't see the first video, you might go back and catch the first video. I do a flip through of the project here and a quick rundown of the supplies you're going to need. So without any further ado, let's just jump right in. Let's go ahead and make the very first element, the big part, which is our cover. So you are going to want a file folder that has the tab on the right hand side. If your file folder has the tab on the left hand side, that's okay. Just flip it inside out and voila, you have a tab on the right. Okay, that's what we're going to do first. My file folders, as I mentioned in the first video, are about 11.5 inches across. They are a standard US letter sized folder. So they are about 11.5. We are going to have a 1-inch spine. And I didn't talk about this in the first video because it was really just a flip through, but I'm going to talk to you about it now. I've gone ahead and kind of pushed it back and made it nice and square looking. There's no reason why you can't have a square spine if you want to. But when you accidentally sit something down on this book, you're going to cause a bend in the spine. And oftentimes it's going to happen somewhere where you didn't intend for it to get bent or crushed, and then you're going to be upset. So if you'll see, I have some ridges here. These are kind of some predefined, squish lines, for lack of a better term. So I have gone ahead and scored the spine. So that way, if I set something down on my book and it gets a little squished, it's going to give where it's supposed to give, and it's not going to squish somewhere else. Okay, so I'm doing a 1-inch spine with squish lines. Okay, all right, so our file folder is approximately 11.5. And if you've worked with file folders very much, you know that file folders are not exact, and oftentimes they're not very square. But that's okay. We just got to be close. Doesn't really matter. So I'm going to pull out my scoreboard. If you don't have a scoreboard, that's okay. Just use a straight edge and a stylus or a bone folder or even a mechanical pencil that doesn't have any lead sticking out. All those will make great tools to run along the edge of your ruler to make score lines if you don't have a scoreboard, okay? So don't just rush out and buying a scoreboard. You don't necessarily need it. All right, so I have my file folder. The tab is on the right hand side, and my file folder is 11.5. Let me move the camera here just a hair so you can see the bottom. Okay, now the first mark I'm going to make, now again, I've told you mine is 11.5 inches wide. You will need to adjust the measurements if you are using a different sized file folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a front cover and a back cover that are the same size and a 1-inch spine in the middle. Okay, so you may need to do the math on your own if your file folder is a different size than mine. If yours is the same as mine, great, then your measurements will match. All right, the first line I am going to make is at the 5 1/4, and that is right here. So I'm just scoring this so that I get nice, even lines. And actually, I think I go ahead and flip it over and do it from the back side. Five 1/4. Now I want to have a 1-inch spine. So I then need to go over an inch, which puts me at 6 1/4. And I don't know if you'll be able to see those lines or not, but I have a line here, and 1 inch later I have a line here. So I have a 5 1/4 inch cover on this side, and a 5 1/4 inch cover on this side, and a 1 inch spine in the middle. I know you probably cannot see my score lines. Now, if you want to have a straight spine, and you don't want to put those creases in I talked about, that's fine. At that point, then you're done. You can go ahead and just fold your folder, and then there's your nice, even, straight spine. Okay, but if you want to put your lines in the way I'm going to, then stick with me. All right, let's go back to our original 5 1/4 inch line that we first made, and I'm going to go over 1/4 of an inch. So on my scoreboard, that would be 1, 2 lines. So I'm marking now at the 5 1/2, or scoring, I should say, at the 5 1/2. My original line was at the 5 1/4. I'm now scoring at the 5 1/2. Okay, I'm going to go over 1/4 inch more again. So I'm at the 5 1/2, which means I'm going to go 1, 2, and now I'm at the 5 3/4. And I'm scoring, and now I'm go back to where I was at, 5 3/4, and I'm going to make one more score line, 1, 2, this time at the 6 inch mark. So basically I have a 1 inch spine that I have made 3 lines inside of 1/4 inch apart. Okay, so I should now have 5 lines. My original 5 1/4 inch line, then at 5 1/2, 5 3/4, 6, and my other original line at 6 1/4. Okay. Go through and bend all my score lines. Again, you don't have to do these. You can leave your spine nice and square if you want to. I don't like unexpected surprises, though, especially if I'm going to make this for somebody else. So this just gives my spine the correct places to give way when needed. And after we put some paper on it and we put our elastics in and all of that, it'll straighten back up mostly. Okay. All right, there is our main cover, the front and the back. Okay. Next step we're going to do is we are going to create, let me pull my other one over, my finished one. We're going to create the pockets, the flip here and the flip here. We're going to create those 2 items. Okay, so we're going to create this flip and this flap. Okay, all right, so I'm going to set this out of the way. This is my main cover, and again, make sure after you've done all your folding and scoring that your tab is here on the right and it's on the inside. Okay, all right, now we're going to need another file folder. Actually, we're going to need 2 more file folders. So we're going to need a file folder that has the tab on the right. Okay, well that's perfect because I have one right there. And we're going to need a file folder that has the tab on the left. Okay, so I'm just going to turn my folder inside out. And now I have exactly what I need. All right, I'm going to back this camera up just a little bit. I think I zoomed it down a minute ago and forgot to put it back. So I've got one with the left, one with the right. All right, let's start with the front one. That will be our tab on the right. And what we are going to want is let me check my measurements. I want a 5 inches across. That's what I want. So I'm going to go 5 inches from this side, from the tab side, 5 inches. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and mark it so I don't have to unfold my paper trimmer all the way. Five inches. Let me pull my paper trimmer in. Oh, it is kind of big. And I'm doing 5 inches from the tab side, okay? All right, hang on to this. We're going to need it for our inside flaps, okay? This is the part we do need, 5 inches. Okay. I'm going to bring my scoreboard back over. And what I want is, sorry about that, these are hinged. So I've left a little bit here inside to make a flap. It gives us a gluing flap and a hinge, okay? So we're going to be creating a hinge or a flap, a gluing flap. That's what I should call it. And I want to go 1/2 inch from my cut side, from the side I just cut off. So that would be from your left. I'm going to go 1/2 inch. And I'm just going to score that. Okay, so I've created a 1/2 inch flap, and that is what we're going to use to be our hinge and gives us a place to glue. Okay, excuse me. Now, you'll notice after you've scored that it's kind of it's kind of a lot bunched up there, right? Because you have 2 layers of file folder bunched up. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut off this flap here on the top. But before I do that, I'm going to trim the height that I want for my file folder. Because as you can see, it's too long. I want it to be shorter like this. So I'm trimming mine to 7 inches tall. And that is 7 inches from the top of my flap. I'm just double checking my measurements. So 7 inches from the top of my flap. If I opened my paper trimmer up all the way, I'd have my guides and I wouldn't have to mark it before I cut it, but I don't want to do that. Okay, so I'm cutting the height to 7 inches. Hang on to these pieces that you cut off, put those in a pile somewhere, because that's what I used when I made all my tags and my journaling cards was, well, at least my tags was scrap pieces of file folder. Okay, now we have 2 pieces, right? We have the top and we have the bottom. All right, again, so we don't have all that bulk, we're going to cut off this flap on the top portion. We don't need that because we're going to glue these together anyway. We don't need that. So bring my paper trimmer back over. And I'm just going to trim off that flap. Okay. So now I just have a single layer of flap, which will work a lot better. Okay, and that's that. That's our first one. And I'm not gluing these on right now because I want to put all my paper and stuff on them before I glue anything together. But in the meantime, I don't want to lose them. So I am going to call this, let's call this A. This is going to be flap A. And I'm going to call this A1, and this one A2. Okay, so that's what I'm naming them for now. So in case I get these mixed up with something, I know what they are. So I have A1 and A2. That's my first flap. Okay, let's set this out of the way. And let me bring this back over. So we just made this portion. Now let's make this one, the big flap on the outside. We're going to make this one. Okay. All right. So there's the file folder, the third one that we had set aside. This time we want the flap on the left-hand side. Okay. And we want this one to be 5.5. Let me double check my measurements. Just to be certain. Yes. Okay, I want this one at 5.5. My chair is so squeaky. Squeaky, squeaky. And I am cutting it 5.5 from the tab side. So start here and go over to 5.5 and trim it off. Just marking mine. 5.5. Okay, this is the part I just cut off. Hang on to this, we're going to use it. Okay, again, we want a flap, like I showed you. So we're going to score a 1/2 inch flap. So I'm scoring a 1/2 inch over from the edge I just cut. Yes, I know I'm scoring something that I'm just going to cut off. That's okay. It just marks it for me. All right. So we've done that. And this one, we're going to trim the height on as well. And this one we are going to trim to, let me check my measurements. I have this one at 8.5. 8.5. So I'm going to trim it off. Trim off the bottom. I'm doing 8.5 inches from the top of the flap. 8.5. Run that through my trimmer. Now I'm only left with this. You can toss this away if you want to, or you know, hang on to it for something else, but I'm not going to be using it. Okay, now we again have 2 pieces. Here's our top piece. We're going to trim away that 1/2 inch flap that we made. Let's get rid of that bulk. Trim that away. Okay, our bottom piece still has the flap. Okay, there we go. This one I'm going to mark as B. B1 and B2. Okay, makes sense? Okay, before I set this off to the side, I forgot to show you on the other one a little trick. These gluing flaps, sometimes when you stick them in somewhere to be glued, sometimes things kind of peek out or show, and I don't know, from my old mini album making days, I learned to kind of 45 the corners of your flaps from the score mark out to the end. Give it a little bit of a 45, and sometimes that helps reduce any bulging or pinching in the corners and helps anything from showing. So that was flap B. I'll do that real quick for flap A. The more I do ahead of time, the less I have to do and the less I forget to do when I put it all together. Okay, there's flap A and flap B. That's the front flaps. That was this part and this part. So now we're going to go to the inside, and what we're going to cut is this flap and this flap. Okay, this flap and this flap. So we are going to bring back in our file folders that we cut off, the other halves of them. Okay, so let's start with the front one. This one here in the front, we're going to start with that one. Okay, and that one I have as 5 inches, and that one we are going to be using, if you'll notice, you've got a rounded corner or a factory corner on the left, you've got a factory corner on the right. For this front one, we're going to be using the factory corner on the right. Okay, so your cut edge is on the left, your intact edge is on the right. That's the one we're going to be using for the moment. Okay, this one we are cutting to be 5 inches. So we're not cutting very much off of it, but I am cutting that from the factory side. So factory side, or the right hand side where your corner is at, I'm cutting it 5 inches over. Okay. All right. No necessarily any need to hang on to this unless you want to. You can make belly bands and tuck spots with that, or stamp on them. Okay, again, we need a flap. So again, we're going to be going a 1/2 inch. So this is a 1/2 inch from our cut side, from the left. Okay, and I am, let's see, let me look at this one. Oh, yes, yes, yes. This one I'm actually going to cut twice. And I'll show you why, just because it's tricky. Tricky to explain without, let me just show you so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I've got my flap, all right. Now I want it to be 6 inches tall. All right, so I am going from the very back flap on my file folder, the outside, and I am trimming to 6 inches tall. Okay, 6 inches tall. So here's the cutoff part. You can use that for tags later. Okay, so now I have my 2 pieces, right? Okay. Before I lose track of what they are, I'm going to go ahead and call them C. This is going to be C1 and C2. C2 is the back. It's the one that's going to have the flap. I'll go ahead and bend that now. Okay, this is the part that goes in the front, so I don't need that flap on the front, remember? So I'm going to cut that 1/2 inch flap off. Okay, all right, that goes on the front. Now, as you can see, there's not a lot of space difference between the front piece and the back piece. And if you look in the one I made, I created a little bit of a height difference so that you could clearly see the pocket, and it looked more like a file folder tab. And so what I did is I just cut this outside piece to be a little bit shorter. So I'm just going to take this piece here and I'm going to bring it down a little bit. See what I'm saying? Bring it down a little bit, and I'm just going to cut it off a little bit. And I'm cutting off about a 1/2 inch, okay? So I just want to trim about a 1/2 inch off of the bottom down here, okay? About a 1/2 inch. It doesn't have to be exact. Okay, so I just trimmed that off a little bit. And now, I know it's probably hard for you to see in this lighting, and now you can see there's a little bit more of a difference, okay? And my pattern paper in the back will show better, and it'll look more like a pocket and look more like a file folder tab, okay? All right, so we have C1 and C2. I'm gonna put these off to the side, and let's do the next one. We're gonna do, so that was this one. Now we're going to do this flap here. And we're gonna do the same thing with it. We're gonna cut the front panel down to be a little bit shorter. Okay, all right, so we need our 1/2 file folder we cut off earlier. This time the factory edge is on the left, cut edge is on the right, and this one we are cutting at 5 1/2 with a 1/2 inch flap again. 5 1/2. Up to you whether or not you keep that. Okay, factory edge is on the left. Bring my scoreboard back over one more time. And we are scoring our 1/2 inch flap. See, this is really super simple. And you can alter these flaps and flips and pockets to whatever sizes you want them to be. If you're going to use a larger file folder, then you'll need to adjust the measurements. But this is just the basic idea, and then you can construct your flips and flaps, pockets, and all that however you want to. You can do 3 or 4 of them on the front if you want to. Okay, there's our flap. Okay. This time I am trimming, let me check my height. This one I am trimming to about 7 1/8, roughly 7 1/8, 7 1/4, somewhere around there. Doesn't have to be exact. I just like to stagger the heights of them so they show better. So I'm doing 7 1/8. Close enough. And again, I'm going to cut that one down a little shorter, remember. Okay. All right. Cut them to 7 1/8. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the top one. I'm going to label them D1 and D2 in case I misplace anything. I'm going to cut that 1/2 inch flap off just like we've been doing. Okay, and just like we did earlier, I'd really like to bring this down just a little bit, make it a nicer looking pocket. Okay, so I'm going to cut roughly a 1/2 inch or so off of the bottom down here. Okay, I'm just eyeballing a 1/2 inch. I don't even know. Might have been more or less than a 1/2 inch. In fact, I ended up trimming close to 3/4 of an inch off. So, but whatever. Okay, now we've got a clearly defined pocket, and it does look a little more like a file folder tab. Okay, so here's our flap in the back. I'm going to cut the 45 on it. Okay. All right. Set those off to the side. So I have A, B, C, and D. A and B and C and D. And so those will be ready to glue into my file folder. Okay, so one more thing before we wrap it up, just bare bones project related. If you're not going to follow along as I decorate the journal and put all the specialty papers in and all that, then you'll want to know this one last thing. I made sure that before I glued any of these on, I put my paper on the back first. That was just helpful. And I made sure that I kind of dry fitted everything. So, and then the other thing I did, if you want yours, the initial construction to be like mine, then on your left hand side, I glued the top shut here and created a pocket right here. Those of you that's going to follow along decorating, you don't need to worry about this part. I'm going to go through all this later. I'm just talking to the people that are going to be done and wrapping it up with me right now. And then to those people, just to tell you where placement is, B went here, okay, A with the flap on this side went here, okay, then on this side over here, I ended up gluing this down. I didn't do any of this till later after I had all my papers on, okay. And I'm just talking to everybody who's not coming back and joining in on the decorating. D was glued in like this. That's before I glued that shut. And C was glued in here. Okay. All right. That gives you an idea where everything was put on my bare bones journal. But for those of you that are going to be back in the next video and you're going to stick with me till the end, don't worry about anything I just mentioned, okay? All right, so for now, you've got your flips and your flaps and your cover, and I'm going to see you guys in the next video when we start making this thing come together with our papers and our gluing, and it's going to start to come together, okay? I look forward to see you guys next time. Happy crafting. Take care. Bye.